Welcome to episode 6 of Meenal's World. Firstly, I just want to apologize for not joining you on Friday like I've been promising for the last couple of weeks. And as you can imagine, being a doctor right now is quite busy, quite tough as well. This week I don't have a guest with me. This episode is for everyone out there who wants to know about the virus. Those who are worried about their safety, those who are worried about their family safety, those who are concerned about the future as well. You'll be going through so many different WhatsApp forwards, social media links, and be watching the news as well. And I understand that the information that you're getting is at such a high volume that you just don't know what to follow. It is a terrifying time because we are fighting a blind enemy. But hopefully in the next 30 minutes, I'll update you on everything you need to know and guide you through the next few days. And I say next few days because I will release another episode as a follow-up, because guidelines are changing, information is changing, not just on a daily basis, but even on an hourly basis as well. So we'll get right to it, and I hope at the end of this episode, you'll feel reassured, calm, and well-informed. So just a few months ago, I was on the ward with a couple of nurses, and we were discussing the coronavirus that broke out in Wuhan, in China, and a lot of us were just like, well, not likely it's going to come to the UK. We didn't think it would get to this point where it would become a global pandemic. And I say this as a doctor as well, and as a lot of other healthcare professionals did not expect it to get this bad a few months ago. But obviously, as it started going from country to country, we were seeing what was happening, and we were trying to learn from other people's mistakes. And we were always thinking, like, when would it be the first case coming into the UK? When would be the first case in India? And we just didn't know what was going to happen. So we are at a point now where it is a global pandemic. It is a point where we all have to take this very, very seriously. As a doctor working at the front line, I was working at the front line a couple of weeks ago. I've been moved to a place that's a bit quieter now because they are trying to clear up the hospital beds for these COVID-19 patients. This is a serious issue. And for anyone who jokes about it, for anyone who thinks that they can still go out to the pub, for anybody who still thinks that it's okay to socialize and not maintain social distance, you're an idiot. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's the reality and that's the truth. This virus is much more dangerous than a lot of other viruses you would encounter during the winter season. It's not just a flu. It's not just a common cold. This will put you in an ITU bed. This will put you on a ventilator machine, even if you are healthy. Now, I know a lot of us are seeing on the media that the only patients who are getting this virus are those who are vulnerable, those who are elderly. Yes, of course, these patients are generally under a higher risk of getting an infection or of getting a disease because they are immunosuppressed. And that's just common knowledge. But there are patients who are healthy, who are fit and generally well, who have been getting this virus and have still been taken to ITU services, who need emergency intervention. This virus is much more virulent, which means that it's much more infective than the normal flu. What it does is that when it's spread, now obviously we're still learning about more information about how it's spread and how you can get it, but we think it's spread through aerosol and air droplets. So this is why we're saying that try not to speak to anybody that's so close to you. Try and maintain your social distance. And it's spread through air droplets. So when it's spread and when you catch it, it can give you a bilateral pneumonia. So it can actually affect both lungs. And a lot of our x-rays and CT scans that we have been doing in the hospital for a lot of our patients have been showing this picture. And you can imagine if you have someone who's asthmatic or who's got weak lungs or who's a cancer patient, their lungs will not be able to cope. So this virus is not a joke. It is very serious. I have been worried about it for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think I've only hit my point of concern now I've only hit my peak of concern now because in the UK, we're seeing the death toll rise. We're seeing the number of cases come back as a higher number every single day. And it's obviously because we are getting more tests in. More tests are coming back positive. So obviously the numbers will go up with it. Now, I know that in India, people are saying that there's only 300 cases of the virus and there's nothing to be worried about there. Well, please remember that if you're going to swab 1,000 people, you probably will get 300 positive cases. But what happens if you swab 5,000 people? You will get 1,000 cases positive. So please don't look at these numbers. Just remember that the testing is not as accurate as it should be. Not everybody is being tested at the moment. I understand people are being tested when they come into the airports. People are being swabbed, and that's fine. But there's a huge population who may have got this virus and haven't been tested. Now, one thing that you do need to know is that this virus has an incubation period of 5 to 15 days. So this means that you could have the virus but show no symptoms. You won't have a cough, you won't have a fever, you won't feel unwell. During this incubation period, you could be in contact with 10 people or 20 people, and you can pass it on to them, and they can pass it on to other people. So you can see the trend that you can see how this can spread so quickly and become so dangerous. So just remember that numbers right now mean nothing because not everyone is being tested, and especially in the UK. Because in the UK, we are frustrated as doctors. We are terrified. We are terrified of going into work every single day. And I'm sure it's the case in a lot of other countries as well. I mean, I'm sure a lot of doctors are fearful of what's coming, what's going to happen. Will they have enough equipment? Will they have enough resources? Doctors in the UK are worried because we're not being tested, even though we have been exposed to these patients. And we are worried because we haven't been given the equipment we need to protect ourselves. So surgical masks, apron, gloves, these precautionary measures were not put in place when they should have been. Now, I don't know what it's like in India. I've tried so hard to look on the internet to find out what it's been like as a doctor working on the front line. I've seen a few stories, but I don't think that's enough for me to come to a conclusion to say they have enough equipment or they don't have enough equipment, or if they have enough support or if they don't. So I'm not going to comment on that too much. But in the UK, doctors are worried because we can only be swabbed, we can only be tested or take time off work if we show symptoms. Now, this might change tomorrow, this might change in a few hours, and this is why I said I will do another episode where I will update everybody. But the scary thing is that if we only get tested when we're symptomatic and we're coughing or we show signs of fever, then what about the 10 days before that? We probably had the virus and we probably spread it to other people without knowing that we've done that. And a lot of us working in the front line, a lot of us working in A&E have put ourselves there to save the lives of these patients. And we're coming home to our younger children or to our elderly relatives, and we don't know who we've spread it to. So that's the biggest fear right now, especially in the UK. And I don't want to scare anyone. This is not an episode to put fear in people. This is an episode to educate you and to make sure that you understand what this virus is and what it's doing to just the population around the world and doctors working at the front line as well. Now, I will go into work tomorrow and I'll see what the update is like. I'll see what the guidelines are like. And this is changing all the time. But I've been very concerned about my family and friends in India. And it's really sad and it's really upsetting for me to say this, but I've been trying to speak up. I've been trying to warn my family about what's coming their way. The UK did not learn from the mistakes of Italy. We are just 2 weeks behind following their trend. And we are on track. We're on track in terms of the number of cases being positive and the number of deaths. And we're just 2 weeks behind. We're just 14 days behind them. So we had enough time to act on it, but the government didn't act on it. So now we're in this situation. Now, India have done really well, especially today as I speak. It's Sunday, the 22nd of March. So they did the Janata curfew, and that's amazing. It's really nice to see that people followed those rules and stayed at home for the betterment of other people. But this one curfew is not going to solve everything. This is something that has to be practiced over the next few days, over the next few weeks, maybe. I mean, it might be that in the UK they just put us on lockdown for 30 days. So it might happen in India as well. Now, India is a much bigger country, so I understand that in terms of economics, in terms of the way the country will function, it will be difficult because you've got a larger population of people, and a lot of people will be affected by this. A few days ago, we saw Kanika Kapoor come on the news that she was tested positive. Now, I'm not sure how she was tested. I don't know if she paid for a private test, but she'll be okay if she gets the right medication and the right treatment because she's got the money to go into hospital. And I'm not belittling her symptoms. I'm not belittling the fact that she has it. I feel for her. I understand how bad this virus is, but she's one person who managed to get the right treatment. And, you know, not everyone can get that. A lot of people in India right now, the labor class especially, will suffer. And these are the ones who will be forgotten over the next few months because do you think everybody who's living in a village right now, who's living in a small town, will understand the symptoms of the virus completely for them to take themselves to hospital? And they have so many other things to think about. They don't know if going to hospital is the right thing because, well, they have to pay for the medication, they have to pay for their treatment, they have to pay for the hospital stay. It also means that they cannot go to work and they cannot feed their families. And the reason why I'm advocating for this is because I have such a big frustration for what's happening right now. And it's not just this pandemic, it's in any political movement, in any crisis. It's always the same people being affected. It's always the same people who have to just get on with it. And if they suffer, they suffer. It's okay. And I understand people are trying to help. People are trying to put something in action. I know that in Uttar Pradesh, they've said that the labor class will receive 1,000 rupees a week. Fantastic. That's great. And I'm happy that they're doing that. But please remember, it's very easy for you to isolate in your nice houses, in your homes where you have, for example, in my case, I've got central heating. In India, you have your air conditioning, and that's fine. I know a lot of middle class houses don't function without these people in the labor class because they need maids, they need people to clean the house. And this is when they need to just take a moment and think, do I need to invite them to my home? Do I need to make them leave their house, leave their setting and come to my home just to make my life a bit easier? I'm not saying everyone does that. Again, I'm trying not to generalize, but this is a feeling I have. And I'm using this podcast now to express everything that's been on my chest over the last few days because I've gone through a wave of emotions from frustration to anger to sadness, and I just don't know how to put it all. So I know I'm going on different tangents along this episode and I'm going in and out of different sort of topics, but this is how I feel. This is not to be taken lightly at all. My father was someone who was born in Delhi, and he was from a class of people who had to work every day because they needed to bring food home, they needed to bring money home. And this is what I'm imagining right now. Like if my father was in that situation, who would help him? Who would say, okay, you know what? You can stay at home with your family, take care of your elderly parents, and we will provide for you. I understand a lot of people are doing that already. We can't do that for every single family because, again, we're in a crisis right now, and it's just not feasible. So all I'm going to say on that end is that please consider if you need people to come into your house to work, if you really need those people to if you really need those people to clean your floors, if you really need those people to come in on a daily basis, please remember that a lot of maids and a lot of housekeepers actually move around different houses throughout the day. So they could be in contact with lots of other different things. And they could be coming to your house as well. So keep the incubation period in mind when I'm telling you this, because a lot of these people don't have a choice but to come to work. And I want you all to think about how much you need them right now and if you need them. If you're not in India right now, and if you are in the US or Canada and you got family in India, please pick up the phone and call them and speak to them about this. This is our moral responsibility. It is our social responsibility to help and to make sure that this does not spread, because if it spreads, what's going to happen is that it's going to end up as a burden on the hospitals, which are overflowing already in India. A lot of these hospitals are full and jam packed on a normal day, especially the government hospitals. I don't know what's going to happen when this pandemic really hits these people in India. And I don't know how many ITU beds or critical care beds are available for these people. And a lot of people might just die because of the negligence of the healthcare system. And this is not something that's happening only because of the coronavirus. This is something that happens on a daily basis to these people. And I hope that this wakes everybody up and understands that healthcare is something that we should never, ever take for granted. Now, in the UK, we have been on the front line and we have been trying to prevent ourselves from getting it, our families from getting it. And it's got to the point now where doctors have become unwell. Doctors have become so unwell that they've ended up in ITU on ventilators. Now, everyone is saying, oh, doctors are heroes, nurses are heroes. I know that in the Janta curfew at 5 p.m., people were applauding outside their windows. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm really happy that people understand the level at which we're working at right now and the stress we're under, not just emotionally, but physically as well. But all I'm going to say is that once this pandemic is over, once this virus is over, please do not forget what we do for our community. And please do not forget what we do for the public, whether we're working in the UK in the NHS or in India. In the UK, in the hospitals, I, as a doctor, and my colleagues as well, we don't have a proper coffee room. We don't have a proper restroom where we can just lie down and put our feet up after a long day, even not during a night shift. If you just think about these small things, that will mean a lot to us. We don't need free food. Well, we do need free food because we're quite hungry right now. A lot of us are working long hours. We do need the free food. But the free food and the flowers, and it's amazing. It really melts my heart to see how people are so grateful for our work. But please don't forget this after the virus is over. Please don't forget the doctors and nurses who've taken care of your family in the past. Drop them a message, give them a phone call, and tell them, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for us in the past. And just make sure they're okay. And it's very sad for me to say this right now on the record, but my own family in India haven't called to check if I'm okay. My own family haven't called to check on me to say, Meenal, you're working in A&E, your husband's working in A&E. Are you safe? And that's very painful for me because it just shows that people perhaps are choosing not to listen to us or choosing not to listen to the media, choosing not to listen to what's going around and what the reality is. People are trying to ignore the reality because they think that it's happened in the UK, it's happened in Europe, and India seem to be much better prepared. I'm not saying they're not, but you just don't know what's going to happen. It actually got to the point where I've been calling my family in India to warn them, and they've simply just said, Meenal, if you're that worried, just come into India and solve it yourself. Obviously, can't really do that if there's travel restrictions, but this is the backlash I'm getting. And I'm speaking up. Feels like I'm screaming into a black hole, but I'm going to keep screaming and screaming from my rooftop. I'm going to keep going until people understand the extent and the severity of this virus. So that's my rant. I managed to get it off my chest, and I hope I haven't scared anybody at this point. But I think it's important we're all on the same page and we all understand how bad it is. But also if we all take the right measures, which I'll go into in a second, then we can be okay. Then this can be solved. Obviously not easily. I'm not saying it can be solved easily. It will take months, might even take years to recover from this, but we can slow down the progress of this. So a lot of you have messaged me and emailed me and messaged me on Instagram as well. And you've asked me about what to do in self-isolation. What about the masks? How is it spread? How does social distancing help? And these myths that are coming about warm weather killing the virus and stuff. So I'll go through that with you now. And I hope it answers the majority of questions. And of course, as I said, I am coming back in the next few days. So you have more time to send me more questions you have, because information is changing on a daily basis and even on an hourly basis for doctors as well. So one of the things is a lot of people are asking me, why does self-isolation help? And it just goes back to what I was saying about the incubation period. If you remember, the incubation period is 5 to 15 days. So you could be a carrier and you could be asymptomatic. So if you do go outside, if you do not self-isolate, if you are socializing, you could be spreading it to other people. It's really as simple as that. And if you spread it to 10 people, they spread it to another 10 people, it means that 100 people will have it and a high proportion of them will need hospital admission. So not only do you have a social responsibility to not spread it to other people, but you have a responsibility to help your doctors. You have the responsibility to help your health system not become overburdened by this virus. And we're talking about vaccines, you're talking about tests and all of that. I really think society is the biggest vaccine right now. Isolation is the biggest vaccine right now. This is the closest thing we have. So this is the reason why self-isolation is so, so important. And you're asking me, what do I do in self-isolation? Now, it's funny because we're always talking about how we wake up on a Monday morning, we don't want to go to work, we don't want to go to school. And now we've been given that by Mother Nature. Now people are just confused as to what to do. And that's fine because I understand we're a society where we're working at a fast pace, we're always on the go. And now to suddenly put a stop to that is difficult. Now, this is when you have to make the most of it. This is the time where you can connect with family members you haven't spoken to, reconnect with friends you haven't spoken to, speak to your neighbors at a social distance. Ask them how they're doing. Go around your neighbors and ask them, do they need any milk? Do they need any groceries? Try and help people in that way, at a social distance, of course, because this is the time now where you can work on your relationships. This is the time now where you can connect or reconnect with people you wish you had time to connect with, old school friends, old college friends. And you'll feel really good about it. You know, yesterday I went through my WhatsApp contact list and I messaged everyone and I asked them how they were doing and how they were feeling about everything. Pick up the phone, call them. You could have an hour conversation, a 2-hour conversation. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter what you talk about as long as you communicate with them, because right now we are in need of social connection at a time like this when we are in isolation. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is, one thing that I'm doing is I'm reading a lot. I am at work. I'm not working with these COVID-19 patients because I've been put in a different place, in a different setting. So when I do come home and if I haven't had a busy day, then I am reading my books. I am working on things like my podcast. How can I make my podcast better? Is there anything else I can do to make it better? How can I improve myself? And things that you've always wanted to do. This is the time now. This is the time now to just pick up that book you didn't have time to read, call that friend you never had time to speak to, and just appreciate the simplicity of life, because you're never going to get this time again. Another question I've been asked is about masks. Now, masks are a different question in the hospital and a different question in the community. Obviously, if you're working in ITU or in A&E in the emergency department, you will need masks that are of a different type, and you don't need to worry about that in the community. The usual surgical masks, the ones that you see in hospital for patients walking in and out or just the general community, they protect you from the aerosol droplets by 80%. So they have an 80% protection. And I might be incorrect in this because I don't want to say this with confidence, but I read a few days ago that it only protects you for about 4 to 5 hours. So these are obviously disposable and you can get rid of them. Now, there is another thing that you can do. You can make your masks at home. And a lot of people have been asking about material and what's the best way to make these masks. So I will post a link in the episode description and you can see which materials are best. Now, after a surgical mask, surprisingly, a kitchen towel is the best material to use. And as you go down the list, you will see cotton, you will see silk, and cotton has about 50% protection, and these kitchen towels have just under 80% protection. So they're the second best thing after these surgical masks that you see in the hospital. So they still protect you. It's not like they don't protect you. And I still think it's much better than nothing. So if you do want to make a mask at home, if you feel like there's nothing available around you, making masks at home are quite easy. And again, I will post a link with the directions so you can see how to make one. And if your grandmother is at home and she's self-isolated, maybe you can send her the same thing as well and ask her, you can make, if she's got a sewing machine, maybe she can sew up some masks, and that will give them something to do as well, and it will allow them to feel like they're contributing to society. Because right now, this whole social distancing and self-isolation makes us feel like we're not contributing to anything. And I understand that, because as I said, we're always trying to do something for the better good for other people. It's just something that we live for every day. Like, how can I be better at my job? How can I help my boss? How can I help my colleagues? If you really want to help people right now, isolate yourself, offer your emotional support, not physical support, because obviously you have to self-isolate and keep yourself at a social distance, but offer your emotional support and just be there for everybody. It's a very difficult time. We're all going through different phases of emotions. So you have to understand that as well. Like, if someone is panicking, remember that could be you next week. That could be you in a few days' time. We're all going through different emotions at different points of this pandemic. So just be wary of that and just be mindful of that as well. And if you have any questions, do message me over the next few days. Oh, I just saw one more question, actually. Sorry, I missed this one. It was regarding if warm weather kills a virus. Now, it hasn't been proven that warm weather will kill the virus. You have to remember that different parts of the world go through different seasons at different times. So this virus could move towards continents right now that are in summer and are approaching winter. So that's not going to affect it. The weather's not going to affect it, because countries like India, which are quite warm right now, countries like Australia, which are quite warm right now, have positive cases of the virus. So that's another myth. So don't go on all of these things that you're getting on social media. Please use your brain and use your common sense to follow the right channels. I suggest you only read things like the New York Times, the Guardian, BBC, and try and avoid all the mess that's around that, because you're not going to get accurate information. And I really hope everyone is safe at home. I hope this episode has given everybody a wake-up call if they needed it, but I also hope this has given you some more comfort in understanding the virus better. And remember, we become fearful of something if we don't know enough about it. So educate yourself on it in the right way. Educate yourself through the right systems. You have everything on your fingertips right now to work on it. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I could go on forever. My emotions are all over the place. I've cried, I've laughed, I've been confused. I just don't know what's going to happen. And sitting here in the UK right now is a very scary time, because the numbers are going up and we're not far from Italy right now. So I just hope everyone is safe wherever they are. I'm just a message away on Instagram. I'm just an email away. You can find me on Instagram at meanles_world. You can mail me at meanlesworldpodcast@gmail.com. And you can chat to me if you're worried about anything, and send in your questions, because this will go on for the next few weeks. And I want to be here with you, and I want to guide you through this, and I want to make sure that everyone who's listening is okay. So my best wishes to everybody, a big virtual hug. Obviously, we can't give physical hugs because of social contact. So my big hug to everyone, and lots of love and my best wishes. And I really hope India gets through this. I really hope the UK gets through this, and I hope the world gets through this. Everybody's in my prayers every morning. This is a global crisis, but we are also a global community, and we can all help each other. So I'll see you in the next few days. Any questions, just send them through. See you guys soon.